simple,
Yeah,
non-invasive.
watch out.
We
Don't say stuff
understand
like
that.
that because I don't want to get bombed.
Yeah. Well, and so the long and short of it is there's stuff on the way, and we're not sitting on our hands. Literally, though, the politics must change. And until the politics change, we're not going to be able to deploy some of the things that we need to do. And so it's as urgent as ever to regain control of the ship of state and get things going in the right direction before they put us on the rocks forever. And but we're coming. It's happening.
And I'll say this, Juanito, I talked to some people that are your colleagues, friends of yours, and let me tell you, their security was strapped to the gills. And good people, though, man, really good people. And we talked a lot about you, especially Flynn, everybody. Juanito, I didn't know you were as legit as you are. Let me just put it that way. And I'm telling my audience right now, Juanito's legit, folks. I get this all the time from them, Juan. He fucking always goes into his Bible verses and and I'm like, he's going at his speed, at his pace. Folks, he surrounds himself with very good people, and I've witnessed to that. So I'm going to say that I give you credit, Juanito.
Well, I mean, it's not about when I'm trying to share stuff. I'm trying not to make it about me or whatever. I do have fun stuff, and I do things in interesting places with fun people. But at the end of the day, it's about the country, and it's about literally your listeners. They're all in the same place, but they still all require the same soil with nutrients and water and everything else. This is a big country. We all have to have the basics, and then we flourish according to what we've got to add and offer. And who says that the lemon tree is more important than the pine tree or some other thing? We each have to flourish in our own way, but there has to be this basic the nutrients, the water available to us to flourish and function. And that's what makes America America. Reagan said, the business of America is business. And we all share our expertise, our skill sets, and end up with, what makes for a great country. I've enjoyed different things. And I can't necessarily say that I prefer one over the other. I'm having fun at each time.
Yeah.
And, when I was doing race car stuff, that was one thing, race boat stuff. And then later, when I got into other things with, nation state level stuff, a different realm completely, business stuff, a different realm. And, I enjoy that. Other people around me, most of them have one project, and that's all they're on, and that's where they're effective. I can't bore in that way. I'm doing a bit more oversight, just like on the medical stuff that you saw. But when you were there, the reason you and I didn't get to meet directly, even though I had the people in town to take care of several people, I was down on the border. I was with the sheriffs and with the teams down on the border there in Texas, going through a project there that we're getting ready to deploy, and coordinating between other projects there that other people are doing.
How do you feel? That was in Texas. How do you feel? How do you feel about Greg Abbott? You don't have to agree with me, but I'm going to call him a rhino. So that's me.
Sometimes you have to work with what you got.
Yeah,
and I'm not going to throw stones, and that includes the governor. You don't realize how many constraints there are on people, even if they sort of want to go one way, they have other stuff pulling on them. Part of the question is, are you ready? Not just willing. Two different things. Are you ready to go to war with the federal government? Not just willing to go to war. And if you're going to defy them on the way that you go about things on the border, you're asking to go to war. Well, you might have to, but timing is everything. Most of what's going wrong there is being orchestrated at the federal level, and the defiance. Look, you got piles of fencing there. They're just sitting there. The fencing won't work for everywhere, but there are sections where the fencing is critical. Other places, it's not about the fencing; it's other stuff. Oh, here we go.
I just don't see how much longer we could take at this, with the borders being wide open the way they are, and thousands, hundreds of thousands a month, I think it is, coming into our country. How, once we get this handled, what's the correction going to be, man? I mean, what are we going to go round all these people up? There's millions of them here now, just since Biden's been in office. I mean, this is just, I don't see how there's a correction in this. I don't see how there could be.
Well, there is correction. It's going to take some work, but there is things that can be done to correct it. It's not going to be instantaneous. Certainly that it's been allowed to get out of control like this. A lot of what's happened here in America, we will be dealing with the rest of our lives, just like the thing that you were dealing with on the medical stuff the other day. As I said, at this point, the rest of our lives, we will have to deal with the consequences of what's been unleashed around the world. And there is no cure. What we have to do is now a maintenance thing. We know where the problems are. We know how to do that. We know how to do it extremely simply and easily on a continuing basis. In a generic sense, do you agree with what we showed you? That it's very simple, very non-invasive, but it is, unfortunately, it's kind of an oddball way of saying it, but it's like trimming your toenails periodically. Fortunately, the level of complexity goes down after a very short period of time. There's just a maintenance mode that's going to have to be in, but we can keep people healthy and monitor, what could become consequences and avoid those. But it is going to be something that it's not going to go away in our lifetime, unfortunately, as it looks right now. So maybe something new shows up at some point in time, but with what we have technology-wise and understanding right now, the simplest method is not going to be some drug cure or something like that to solve what the issue is.
My last video, I put Plan C for chaos. Like I'm saying, the deep state. I went as far to say the deep state now is on Plan C and D, and Plan B was obviously what happened in 2020. This is how I explained it. Plan A was thwarted and intercepted by the White Hats, which was explained to me by your colleagues in depth, and I understand it now. Do you want to touch on what Plan A was? I know some of my audience already knew. I saw some of the comments; they already knew what it was. But did you want to talk about what Plan A was, how we went into Plan B, and why now? I put Plan C as chaos, and now they're looking for race wars, anything to ignite the race wars and any kind of chaos they can bring to the streets.
I had a secretary years ago, and she always referred to me as Maxwell. And the reality is we've thrown them off their game. In fact, let's go right there. This is a really important point. This is the main reason probably for the call today and why we should talk about this. Anybody that thinks that we're losing and it's all over and we're all done and they're, moping and crying in the beer, America's finished and over with, man, stay out of my space. I don't even want to listen to that anymore. It gets tiresome and laborious. If you can't see all of the things that are coming off the rails with this current administration, and by the way, Biden is president of the United States. President is someone that is appointed by Congress, where they've agreed to the electoral vote, the electoral college, and they've decided that those are the numbers. And so Congress,
certified it,
affirms and certifies the election, and the courts didn't disagree with it. Even President Trump, when he could have taken action to slow down or stop the certification of the vote, didn't do that. Neither did Pence, by the way. And so it would have resulted in some type of civil war and would have been very, very destructive. What we have to remember is that's not the only role that the elected leader of the country, the only hat they wear. That's the policing side. The Justice Department is under the executive side of government, and that is not the same as commander-in-chief, and that's the story we've talked about before. So
Trump is the commander-in-chief.
Yeah, Trump's the commander-in-chief. He has not given that up, but we're in a fucking war. Get a clue. That's why Cheyenne Mountain's still closed up. Even the statements Trump made when he closed it up, it may be we're already under attack and don't know it, and be in a state of war already. Yeah, hello, you think so? There's all sorts of little coded things in there. Now, will he be back as president of the United States? Excuse me? Do you even care? Which is more important, the police chief? The commander-in-chief of military forces is not the same as the chief of police of policing actions, which is aimed internally in the country. One is aimed at
Biden's
criminals.
Fucking up the country right now. I mean, as I said he would, is a Trojan horse. I mean, the country's going down the drain. I mean, yeah, he's a commander-in-chief, Trump, but what Biden is doing is dismantling and destroying our country.
It is very destructive. It's damaging the country tremendously. And, the people have to see what this crowd is capable of, left unchecked, what they would do to America and the world. And then
but they're also arrogant, Juanito, all of them. Pelosi, Schiff, all of them. And Schiff's making the rounds now publicly. I'm wondering what that's all about. I think that's because of the Durham report, but they're all just so arrogant. And I think I'm speaking from my audience when I say this. When you look at them, they're drunk on power. They're drunk on power. They're arrogant, and they're just doing what they want.
Well, you used to have a drink here and there. Would you want to ride in the car with these guys drunk on power? They're going to drive it off into the ditch and over the cliff.
Right.
If they're left unchecked. Let me tell you what's going on right now. And a lot of your listeners have already heard this. I talked about it a couple days ago and again last night. Over the last weekend, a number of people were talking. I had a conversation with a congressman, and they were, he called me actually because he wanted to ask me about some stuff related to Spiro Agnew. And so we had the conversation from that history, because it's a younger guy and I know that stuff better than he probably did. And of course, what the deal is that Spiro Agnew was vice president under Nixon. Partway through the two-term presidency of Nixon, allegations of taking bribes, payoffs, came up, and Agnew wasn't going to be able to beat it because they had pretty good evidence. So Agnew had to step down, and they replaced Agnew with Nelson Rockefeller. A lot of people think, no, they replaced him with Gerald Ford because he became president when Nixon stepped down. No. Nelson Rockefeller became the vice president. Sorry, I had a message came in. I had to observe real quick. Okay. Spiro Agnew stepped down. Nelson Rockefeller became vice president. When Watergate came up, and you have to understand, there's this long history between Nixon and the Rockefellers. When Nixon lost the election to Kennedy, President Kennedy won that election because his father, and that changed the outcome of the election on just a few votes, and Kennedy became president. Goldwater went to Nixon, says, you got to fight this. And Nixon said, no, it'll tear the country apart. And so I won't do that. So he didn't fight election. And a lot of people held it against President Nixon because he didn't fight that first time around when he should have, because it was clearly vote that there wasn't enough understanding of how you'd go after it. It would have been a huge fight. It would have been horrible, like what we're having today. In essence,
Trump did the same thing. He picked the lesser of two evils.
Well, not the same. You got to remember, Trump was educated by Nixon. President Nixon and President Trump, when he was, just businessman Trump. President Trump, where he was at, what he learned, what he did with President Nixon, he learned all the little tricks, all the little scams. Nixon brought Nixon brought Trump up to speed on how they'd come after him, what the possible things were that were going to be done against him. And so Trump's been pretty well educated what to expect, where to expect it from, etc. And one of the things that Nixon said was, I should have fought that vote with the Kennedys at the time, and made a big stink about it then. It would have saved the country having to do it at some later point in time, because the vote was endemic at that time and only continued to get worse. The fight that we're having today, had it been had back then, maybe we wouldn't have some of these issues that we have today, because we'd have, got this under control, 50 years ago, 60 years ago. And when Nixon was out of, he'd lost the election, where did he go? He went to work as an attorney, and he worked in a building there in New York as an attorney. Well, it has an address on one side of this building that's different than the address on the other side. You don't realize it, but when you walk down the hall 150 feet, his office is right next to David Rockefeller's office. Jeez. Right down the hall from Kissinger.
Wow,
when Nixon came into power, Kissinger came in right behind him. Nixon was looking over his shoulder the whole time. He understood that there were people that anointed people to be president, etc. And you have to remember also, who was Nixon? This is probably a conversation that, I've been wanting to do a much longer presentation, and I will at some point in time, on Nixon. I don't think that President Nixon has been ever fully understood out in the community completely, but Nixon, after World War II, he was a Navy lawyer and reserve lawyer. And so what was he doing? He was the guy that was helping to decide where all the Nazi scientists were planted around the U.S., the paperclip scientists.
Paperclip project.
Yeah. Why did Eisenhower want Nixon as his vice president? A lot of people forget Nixon was vice president before he ran for the presidency. He was vice president under Eisenhower. A lot of people got all excited. Eisenhower's the one who said, beware of the military industrial complex. Today we'd say, beware of the military industrial political complex, okay? Because you need to add a little bit to it. Has been built out. Nixon was right there with him. Eisenhower was commander of all Allied troops in World War II. When he became president, the other thing was that MacArthur, dealing over in Korea and understanding, and then being taken out of power by Truman, the country was very pissed off with Truman over what happened when he took out MacArthur. And a lot of the people thought MacArthur would run for the presidency. When you're talking about certain letter operations, number operations that people get all excited about, a certain letter of the alphabet, that goes back to MacArthur. People think that just showed up during the Trump administration. No. Trump was invited to run. That operation's been going on for a very, very, very long time. Well, hold on a second. No, let me finish this. This is important. If people don't get this context, they don't understand the fight we're in right now and where we're at. So Eisenhower ran, not MacArthur. MacArthur went into obscurity and disappeared and faded away. Yeah, right. The people around that there, they understood what's going on, including over in Japanese intelligence, our best friends, not Brits, and started the fight back. We've been in a fight ever since. And when Nixon gained the presidency, it was with an understanding and help by that crowd. You weren't going to get there unless you kissed up to that crowd and worked. But Nixon understood that. He understood where all the monsters were buried. So did Eisenhower, and they were trying to work through getting control of the ship of state, which was being captured and taken over by certain families and bloodlines, and had been for a very long time. That was putting us into all these wars and other mischief. When Nixon had to take on Nelson Rockefeller, who couldn't win the presidency with a straight vote, so he does it, through getting in the back door. When Whitewater happened, or Watergate happened, and Nixon was told by Goldwater over from the Senate there that it was time to step down. This wasn't going to hold together. Nixon said, "I will not leave office and hand the reins of power over to that son of a bitch Rockefeller.
Wow.
I won't do that to the American people." He saw this as exactly what it was. There was maneuvering behind the scenes. You got to listen, because I'm going to bring it up to the current moment. So think about this. I will not turn America over to this unelected son of a bitch who has been engineering things to get into power. Because if Nelson Rockefeller had become the president in that backdoor way, he then could have wielded power with the IRS, with investigations, with his buddies, with all the tools of government, and a couple years left in the presidency before the next election. And by the time he got to the next election, as Nixon saw it, you'd never not get a Rockefeller or a Rockefeller apparatchik in the presidency that have so tightened the noose around America, and with the mechanisms of power that you'd never get loose of them. So Nixon told Goldwater to, go come up with a different solution. He wasn't stepping down. He'll take the country where he wouldn't go to the legal stuff, challenging the vote with the Kennedy election. He was willing now to go to the ropes and do anything that he had to in order to protect the country in the current phase. So he changed his attitude. Goldwater came back and they had a fix. The fix was to put Ford into office and leave Rockefeller there in the vice presidency. And then Nixon did his thing with the free energy thing behind the scenes with his Houston project spy, where he sent the message back to Kissinger, who then conveyed it to David Rockefeller, that showed that Nixon had the exact formula, wrote it from memory for the free energy off the ground plane, a Tesla thing, in order to, there you go, in order to, sorry for the distraction there.
Okay.
In order to threaten the Rockefeller clan and the other clans that were, you see, the world runs on energy. Energy is what makes the world go round. Where's the Rockefeller money? Energy. What's Aramco? People think, well, I don't know where the Rockefellers are in energy anymore. Standard Oil, okay, that's no big deal. Excuse me? Arab American Oil Corporation. Okay, well, we know who the Arab side is. Who's the American side? Hello, Standard Oil.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Running oil prices around the world, OPEC, everything else. Nixon understood that. And so Nixon was making hey there, Felix, how you doing there, buddy? Nixon sent this message with the free energy thing. Look, we're going to switch the way that we access energy on the planet, and we're going to do it fairly shortly, but it is disruptive. There's certain taxing things. There's the mechanisms of way access energy. It is a process, but the time is here to do that. We're going to do that, and that's available to us now. But at that exact moment in time, it was still a threat to these power players. If they went too far off the rails, we could just put that out there and throw them off. A lot of people right now in your audience are going, why don't we just do it right now? Why? Because it's a disruptive technology. If you don't do the process correctly, you could literally take the country right off the rails, crash us into freaking tree, and we wouldn't come back for several hundred years. It's just like the idea of revolution in America. If you throw things off in the wrong way, and all of a sudden you've got brother fighting brother here in America, it only works to the advantage of our enemies. And a perfect example is what happened in the Soviet Union. Oh, we got to take out the czars. What'd you get to replace them? You got something more horrific than the czars ever wanted to be. It took us 70 years to defeat the Soviet Union, to get the right metal in place, the right people, the right combination. And for all that, they're still commies, I'm not a Putin lover. I'm also not a Putin hater. They're re-engineering their country too. And there's monsters, the people that started the whole thing against the czars. They're out of Britain. It was a moneyed class that it worked to their advantage to remake Russia in an image that they liked for their globalist plans.
So people understand the severity of it?
Well, they wanted to wipe out America. Look, the whole plan is that they crash America like the Titanic. It's actually even the model that they have in mind. That's why I started my book with the story of the Titanic. We've been in these crises before.
Right.
Plan A included destruction of a city, or the center portion of a city, with a nuclear strike, and the devastation from that, and blame it on North Korea.
And we would have went into lockdowns permanently.
Yeah, in fact, I had one of the Nest team members who were talking here just the other day, and some of the dramas that were going on related to that. So you had a multiple hit on America plan with, for example, we had the thing that happened over on Wilshire Boulevard that we've talked about previously, where you had the helicopters come in and Nest teams come in and remove both the biological and the radiological there from the Guatemalan Cultural Center that was right at the beginning of the bus route there on Wilshire Boulevard that hits all the hotels on the way down. They were going to release a biological 2 years into the Hillary administration, and then that was going to lead to something akin to what we have going on in the world right now. This wasn't plan A. This was in the plan, but it wouldn't be released till much later. And you'd have a country reeling from whatever, accepting, essentially the kill shot without any opposition. Part of the thing too is that it wasn't one thing against America, it was multiple things. So to say that you were, just, what was plan A? Plan A had like 10 pieces to it.
Right.
Sequentially hitting us like Job in his trials. It wasn't just one messenger that came with a message of doom and gloom when Job was being attacked by the devil himself. It was as the first messenger was still speaking, the next messenger arrived, all breathless, to tell him of some other tragedy that happened. And while the second messenger was still speaking, the third messenger shows up with, what just happened elsewise. The devil comes at you. He gets everything precisely set up, all the domino fields. It's not just one group of dominoes. He'll have a field of dominoes here. He'll have a field of dominoes here. He'll have a field of dominoes here. Then he adds the last couple connecting dominoes. So if one goes down prematurely, you can set it back up and do something else. You don't want them all go down until you're ready. So the devil gets them all ready, puts the key things in place, and then bam, he hits the big red button. And all of a sudden it's just wham and wham and wham. And it goes all through the whole, all these different fields simultaneously. And you're just awash in drama. It's like one time I had the boat out, and I lost an engine, and that engine didn't have dual generators on this thing. It only had generators on one engine. I'm like, it was still new to me. So then I had my backup generator running, and something happened with that, with a fuel supply, that the way it was hooked up from the factory was done wrong, and I needed that engine working. And it was siphoning in a way that wouldn't allow the air into the system. And all of a sudden now my backup generator isn't working. And next thing you know, now I don't have hydraulics for steering. I don't have an engine working. I got the other engine, which is a drive engine, working, but the hydraulics, which run my steering, and the generators, which run other controls on the boat, are all off. And I got a couple 100 tons headed for the beach.
Jeez.
It was, and it was rough water. It was in the middle of a storm, so you couldn't see everything. I have no wipers on the boat. And I only had one crew member that day. I should have had two. So I have everything going wrong at exactly the wrong moment.
Right.
From that period. And at the end of the day, what seemed to be locked in, had to be a certain way, wasn't as locked in as you might otherwise have thought. There was a lot of stuff where they could kind of adjust the rules depending on, which way the wind was blowing. So the reason this discussion is happening is because behind the scenes in the Democratic Party, they know that Joe Biden's days are numbered. You can see little poofs of smoke coming out of his ears.
Numbered how, Juanito? What do you mean?
You can see poofs of smoke coming out of his ears.
Like
cognitive,
like Nancy Pelosi will step in, Kamala will step in, or numbered how, like Trump will step in, reinstated.
No. That something is going to happen. The Harris people, which, by the way, the Harris people are the Obama people. If you hear Harris, think Obama in the back room pulling all the controls and running the robot. Okay.
Right.
Obama's running Harris. That was his choice. So they're getting ready that something is going to happen where President Biden, who is lawfully, legitimately president of the United States as far as Congress is concerned, is not going to reach the end of his term for some reason or another because of cognitive capability. They're going to have to replace him, or he just strips the gear, he's out, whatever. I don't feel like getting a visit from the Secret Service.
Yeah.
Like I said, something gnarly. Anybody watching the TV can see there's a
Something
question
wrong
of how
with
much
it.
longer.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Not saying anything that, 300 million Americans aren't seeing themselves. And the other 50 aren't paying attention. So with that in mind, and knowing that the clock is ticking, the Democrats want to get ahead of this situation. It's not about the vice presidency with Kamala Harris solely. Whoever they put into the vice presidency in a normal situation would ascend to the presidency if anything happens with Biden.
Right.
So if you're going to pull a 25th Amendment or something like that, and say that he needs to be replaced because he's no longer functional for some reason, what you want to do, this might look like a side fight. It's actually the main event in many ways. You've had a card where people didn't come for the main event. They came for the next, because that earlier fight might be even more dramatic,
right,
than the heavyweight fight, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. So this is the one, man. This is the fight happening right now in front of you. It's about to open up. Look, in the book, I have on page 75, I have the popcorn page. And a lot of people, why do you have the popcorn page in there? What's that all about? Well, okay.
Enjoy the
show, right? And a lot of people get pissed off. This isn't playtime. Why are you saying enjoy the show? Look, this is going to be great theater. It's going to be amazing theater. It's about to start. The curtain is about to go up on this act, which is for who gets to be in control of that position in the presidency. And this is all them fighting each other. The Republicans are going to be, chiming in.
So we should expect this more so than Mike Lindell going to the Supreme Court, bringing it on the 23rd. And you're not expecting anything to happen with that, right? So we should be expecting more so Kamala getting in than Trump.
Well, again, the presidency is the turf that they control right now. We've got the stuff showing that, the majority of a 30% of Republicans, just shy of it, believe that President Trump will be back in office as the president before the end of the year. My contention is, really? Is that the most important position? Which is the more important position? Chief of police, because the presidency is about the policing side of government. And the Justice Department is under the executive. Which is more important, the policing side of government aimed internally into the country, or the commander-in-chief with the war power aimed externally? External or internal? You talk about Lindell. Well, what was part of the symposium that he did? The fact that we had external forces, foreign,
both internal and external
sources, but they were actually being orchestrated from outside the country.
Jeez.
While there was people involved inside the country who were in collusion on this, the actual coordination and effort was external, and that's an act of war. A digital attack on the country.
Yeah, and if Mike Lindell can prove that in Supreme Court, if he can prove that, which I'm hearing he should be able to, he's bringing a lot of evidence to the Supreme Court. What about all the executive orders that Trump signed, like in September 2018, foreign interference and all that? I mean, that's why he did it. He saw this coming. So,
well, again, that goes back to most of that has to do with what was going on inside the Dominion machines within their management, et cetera, and how much of that was coordinated from outside the country, and is it nation state level stuff or businessman stuff? What's going on there? So certainly what Lindell has and some of the other people that are involved there, even going back into my computer guys, is all going to be relevant. But at the end of the day, that fight, how fights in the courts go, are they ever over rapidly? Do they choose to delay decisions? Do they drag them out? Do they, have this food fight forever? Look, the country won't last that long. You do need the public to be aware of.
Hold on, Juanito. Hold on. Let me just make this clear. So he could take this to the Supreme Court and they'll just drag it out.
It would most likely take a very long time. The country.
Why fucking is even doing this? Doesn't he know this?
No, you have to have that fight. He's not doing anything wrong, Nino. You have to have that fight to help point it out, to wake up Americans, to see what's going on, to get the evidence on the table.
Yeah, but if nothing can be done about it, No.
Why are the numbers going up and up and up? People saying Trump's going to be back. Why are the numbers going up and up and up? People pissed off at what's going on from the federal side of our government, because more and more people, the evidence is coming forward. The conversations are being had. This is part of the reawakening of America. The red pilling of America is getting the evidence out there. The normal media sources that should be investigating and talking about and doing stuff on this have been derelict. And so also the American people themselves. The reason we're in this mess, you get the government you work for, earn, and deserve.
Right.
And unfortunately, Americans haven't worked at having a good government, obeying the Constitution, staying on point. They've earned and deserve a fucked up government like
we haven't put their feet
they haven't
to the fire.
been paying attention.
Right.
Yeah, and we've let a bunch of ne'er-do-wells by collusion and graft get into positions of authority and hold those positions, and we haven't challenged that. And they've captured the realm of.
But when is it going to be? Yeah, all this is happening, and I see it. I mean, we can all see it, but fuck, Juanito, I don't think we have 2022 or 2023. We definitely don't have 2024. This has to get solved like pronto. Like,
okay,
you know what I mean? Like, we don't have time. We're going to be Venezuela, man.
Okay, Nino, your audience, listen. How interesting is it going to be for your Thanksgiving conversations with your family around the table, knowing that the budget crisis is coming up the following week, knowing that the Democrats are beginning to take pot shots at each other, getting ready to have a fight over whether Camilla gets to stay in office, qualifies to be in office, or should be replaced up at top. They're lightweight. They're being chased down by the Egyptian army. At the front of the Egyptian army, they got all these chariots. These chariots are very heavy. They've got narrow wheels. The horses have hooves, but their weight is huge. People go through, they're 200, 250 pounds max, even with a load. The horse comes through and, it's 1,000 pounds. And the chariot behind it is a light armored vehicle, and you have multiple horses pulling this chariot. Think of Ben-Hur. The weight, and they got all the gleaming armor, they're all polished up. They got all their colors in there, and Pharaoh's out there leading the troops, chasing down the Israelites. So as the sea opens, the Israelites go into the seabed, and they're crossing through, and they come up the other side. As they're getting out, you ever been in a crowd that's coming out of a stadium or something, and people are only going so fast, you're trying to push them out? You can only go as fast as the crowd's going. Now they're walking uphill. The people of Israel slowing down a little bit, going up out of the seabed, and the ones behind, we're being chased down. They're getting closer. They're getting closer. You can only go as fast as the crowd is in front of you. Why didn't God make the sea wider? Right. But you can see that it's coming.
It is.
There's going to be drama behind the scenes. So can you imagine? It's not just all that. Remember, the other thing that's going to happen here is we still haven't seen our Cuban Missile Crisis type event. That's coming too. It's Red October.
Well, I mean, it looks like it's heating up in Ukraine, and then in Taiwan and China. Could that be around?
Well, enjoy the show at a lot of levels, and when I say enjoy the show, that's on the policing side, the administrative side, the congressional side. We have to accept that there's theater that's going to happen, and it's part of the waking up of America. Those conversations through the holidays with your friends and relatives, where they didn't want to hear what you had to say before. They didn't want to hear the way you said it before. This is the time when they may very well ask you, okay, why are you saying this? Or what are you saying? Or they'll ask you, they'll give you an opportunity because they've asked you, and they've opened the door to have some of the conversation you weren't able to have before. We don't push people away. We accept that people wake up at different rates of speed. And if they give us the opportunity, slow down, don't make it, don't give them a fire hose, and let them, have the conversation. This Christmas, it's going to be contentious in some places, but there's a lot of other places it's not going to be contentious.
My cousin called me, and he comes from a very liberal family, and I call them liberal because they don't get it now. Anyway, he says they're moderate Democrats, and they voted Biden, all this, and now they're just terrified on what's happening to the country. So this is a good sign. So my cousin calls me and tells me his parents now are wondering what the hell's going on with Biden. He wants to give the illegal immigrants $450,000. This is nuts. Well, that can't be, blah, blah, blah. So now they're changing their tune. And I'm like, it took that? So you're saying throughout these holidays, more and more is just going to reveal itself, and more is going to happen to where more and more people say, screw this guy.
Yes,
and Kamala
the federal government is out of control. It's a captured operation. And with the budget stuff, the military stuff, below that upper tier, that is our safety, that is our final safety on these triggers.
Which Trump is in charge of.
And which we do have control of.
Okay.
The rest of it is, that's being administered on the logistics side, very much so, a very dangerous situation. The policing side is out of control. I'm
worried about taxes. To be honest, I'm going to be paying out of my ass now, and so is everybody else. And it's like we're essentially paying for the government for Biden to destroy the country. We're paying for it ourselves. We're funding it.
Mm-hmm. Well, everybody has a different threshold that brings them in. So part of the question is, some people, it's when their retirement money or their Social Security monies can be gone. They've threatened people forever. The Democrats will protect that. Well, are they? Watch and see what happens on this budget thing.
I like your coffee. Your coffee right there. It says Trump.
Oh yeah. Always enjoy that. And actually make a pretty good. They know how I like mine, so I got good guys over there, and but we have to understand that this wake up, the different triggers. Military people are triggered by what happened in Afghanistan. Parents are triggered by what's happening in the schools. Human beings are being triggered by what's happening with human slavery and human trafficking. We're going to get the chance to have conversation. Even the book. The whole reason that I did the book as a coffee table type of a presentation is because it opens the door for conversation. You don't have to jam it down somebody's throat. By the way, I just there you go. So I had to sign a bunch of books. I had people that have been waiting patiently, and I didn't get some books signed and out as timely as I wanted to because of crises like what you knew when you were over in Texas the other day.